All right, we're back again with another Geek Culture Congress live from the Infinity Toy and Comic Con here in Kissimmee, Florida. I am here with Andrea Lorenzo Molinari. I hope I said that name right.
You got it.
Yes, great.
Exactly.
And we're talking about his new projects here on Caliber Comics, which is called The Shepherd. But I saw you at Tampa Comic Con. I did a bunch of walking around there, and I just couldn't get into your zone, into your space there. And because you were in the zone, you were sticking and moving with people visiting your booth.
Yeah,
and it was most before we start asking you questions. Was most impressionable when I walked by your booth is that you actually got props of your character, and you are dressed up as the character. Like this character is almost like you, almost.
It's more than almost. I'll tell you the story and how it. The entire book of The Shepherd comes out of a nightmare that I had about my own family.
Oh my goodness!
So when you say that the character of the Shepherd it's almost me. It actually is me.
Yeah, wow.
So in my dream, I dreamed that my son, who was 16 at the time, who's now my co-writer, that he had gone to a party and died of a drug overdose.
Oh goodness!
And I was devastated because we've always been very close. And as the nightmare was unfolding, I attended his funeral, and I'm grieving him. And just, it's the ramifications of the aftermath of the death of a loved one.
Right.
And I started hearing him calling out to me in my dream that he was lost, that on the other side, he had somehow not transitioned as he should.
Right.
And just that thought of him being lost on the other side pushed me over the edge in the dream, and I just lost it. And I decided that I would take my own life in the dream and go after him to try to save him in the afterlife. And the dream continued to unfold to its resolution. And I woke up and my heart was beating out of my chest. And I'm sweating and, shaking. And my wife is next to me. She's like, what is going on? What's wrong with you? And I said, I don't think you want to know. And she's like, well, now I do. And I told her, and her reaction was, I hate you. Why would you tell me that? I'm like, because you asked me. And I was very upset. She was, needless to say, very upset.
Right.
It took me 2 days to tell my son about it because I'm thinking, is this some kind of portent? Is this foreshadowing what will come? That sort of thing.
Right.
And I finally, after 2 days, got up the courage to tell Roberto about it. And Roberto's reaction was, Dad, that's so cool. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. There's literally nothing cool about this at all.
But he's thinking about it probably in a storybook form,
exactly.
right? Already after you told him the story. From
the beginning, he was thinking, Dad, we need to write this up. This could be a graphic novel. We could do this. And I'm just like, I would hear nothing of it because I was so shaken by it.
Right.
And he just was like, the Chinese water torture where it's like drip, drip, drip. He just wouldn't stop bugging me about it.
Oh, wow.
Finally, it was June 2011 that I had a break in my schedule, and he got wind of it from my wife. And he's like, Dad, this is our opportunity. We need to do it. So I'm like, oh, for the love of Pete, if I do this, if we sit down and we write this together, will you get off my back? He's like, yeah, no problem. I should have known that it wasn't going to be the end of it, but we sat down to get him, and it flowed out of me like water. It was under a month to write the entire novel.
Goodness.
And I thought that was it. I thought, okay, well, here it is. It's written up. Okay, now leave me alone. And he's like, oh, no, we got to get an artist to draw this. So push comes to shove. We work with a company called Scattered Comic Studios out of Sacramento, California.
Okay.
And we got an artist, Ryan Showers, who did our first volume, which is the origin story, The Nightmare.
Right.
And when we got to the end of it, I realized that here we have the two main characters are now dead. They're in the afterlife.
Right.
And they're existing in the equivalent of purgatory. We call it the seam between this life and the life to come.
Right.
And we just realized that we were in love with the process of telling stories like this. That working with an artist is an amazing experience, and we wanted to do more. And we started immediately thinking about what would be the next story, and that led us to the most recent publication, which is called The Path of Souls. And The Path of Souls continues the story of the family. Basically, we meet, the main character, of course, is Lawrence Miller, the professor, who's known as the Shepherd, and his son, Val Miller. And they also meet his dad, Lawrence's dad, the grandfather, in the afterlife, who had been already dead. and he becomes kind of like their spirit guide in the afterlife. And they're traveling now. They're travelers in this middle ground, this seam area, and they come upon a hospital for the souls of soldiers that are suffering from post-traumatic stress in the afterlife.
Wow.
And all this that idea actually comes out of the work of my wife, Myrna. Myrna works for the VA, and she does post-traumatic stress counseling. And she works with a private foundation called Warrior Mission at Ease, out of Odessa, Florida, and they do weekend retreats for veterans. And so I'm hearing about it all the time, and I just started thinking, this would be a really amazing story to imagine that veterans who fell in combat and did get a chance to resolve their issues, that would there be a place in the afterlife where that resolution could take place? And so I started envisioning basically a VA of sorts in the afterlife. And that's what the story is. And we encounter souls from different time periods. We have a Confederate soldier who died in Fredericksburg, 1862. We have a Wendat Huron Indian. You can see him right there. His name is Sandakwa, and he died fighting the Iroquois in 1648. We have a Frenchman right there, Henri Jacques Tournier, and he was with Napoleon fighting in the Battle of Jaffa in March 1799. And then the last character is a character named Jason Roberts. Corporal Jason Roberts was a U.S. Marine who died in Fallujah 2004 fighting in Iraq. And we tell each of their stories and work to the resolution of their trauma in each of their stories. And that's what the Path of Souls is all about. But we're really excited about it. It just got published in May.
Oh, okay.
And we're hard at work on the next story arc that my son has actually written all by himself, and I'm merely the editor. Dad is now just the editor and the guy who pays for the art.
And the guy who pays for the bills, right?
Exactly.
How come he's not working these Comic-Cons, huh?
Normally he does, but he lives in Texas now.
I see.
He is moving back to Florida, so you'll see more of us together.
Okay, cool.
And we are, this week, he's flying back from Texas. We're actually going up to Dragon Con in Atlanta.
Nice.
And we'll be there as of Thursday. And then we're going to do New York City Comic Con in early October. Yeah.
Big.
Yeah, so we're excited about that.
Very, very cool. I'm going to buy a copy of probably the origin story from you right now.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in the whole story that you've come up here with.
Well, think about this. The story has all kinds of possibilities because it takes place in the afterlife. Think about this. Anybody who's ever lived in any culture that's ever existed is fair game. So you could tell stories about ninjas.
Right.
You could tell stories about India, South Africa, Brazil. You could go anywhere in the world that you want, any culture. And now the shepherd is working with the beliefs and religious and philosophical systems of all these different historical cultures. And I mean, how interesting is that?
That is very interesting.
I always was a big fan of social studies when I was a kid.
Me too.
Learning about the Amazon rainforest and the Bushmen and the Egyptians, and there's so many cool cultures that have existed.
So many commonalities.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in religion and a bunch of stuff. Africa, commonalities in religion.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting. That whole concept is really interesting to me. I really like the concept, and the art is awesome.
Thank you.
Who's doing the art on the second volume?
It's actually interesting. When you look at the volume, you'll see this. Each of those characters that I mentioned, those four soldiers, each of them has their own artist. And the idea is that each of them sees the afterlife through their own set of glasses. And so the artists change. So what you're seeing, the cover here is by Kyle Houston. Kyle is out of California. But we have an artist, Cristobal Torres, who's in Miami. He happens to be actually a Dominican priest, a Cuban descent Dominican Catholic priest.
Interesting.
And he's a huge comic book fan.
Really?
Huge. Oh, God. He loves Wonder Woman is his favorite character. We have Beth Varney, who's in Virginia, who's doing the art for Sandakwa, the Huron, the Wendat Huron Indian. And then, of course, we have another artist that's doing the work for Will Brannigan, the Civil War soldier.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it really is a labor of love. And like I said, the different art styles kind of illustrate the different perspectives in the afterlife.
Wow, very, very cool. Very cool. I really like it. And Tell me more about Caliber Comics. Those are the guys with all the artists, right? Helping you with this project.
Caliber started in 1989, and many people know Caliber because it was the original publisher of The Crow.
Okay, yeah.
If you saw the movie with Brandon Lee. It ran, Caliber Comics existed from 89 to about 2001, and then it went out of business, and then it was brought back into business in 2014. So I'm actually part of the second run. But what a lot of people don't know is that Caliber actually was the starting place, the launching pad for a number of very famous creators in comics today. Brian Michael Bendis, David Mack, Guy Davis, Ed Brubaker. There's a list. Phil Hester worked with us. There's a lot of big-time people that got their start with Caliber Comics.
Wow.
And, Caliber is known for taking chances with people. It's a great place for young creators or new creators to grow. And we publish lots of different kinds of books. Like on my table is only a fraction of what we do. And we have military comics and true crime and detective and horror and supernatural thrillers and historical stuff and fantasy, D&D, sci-fi, Western stuff. I mean, and when I was looking for a publisher, I saw that kind of the fact that they were not a one-trick pony, and I was like, oh, I'm all over that. Because I love all those genres. I mean, I like reading lots of different kinds of stories.
So before the Dream, pre-Dream, what was Mr. Molinari's inspirations in anything comic book?
I am a huge Mike Mignola fan. I
love
Hellboy. Yeah. I love BPRD. My favorite of his stuff, believe it or not, is Baltimore.
I was going to say that. It was had like a Hellboy kind of feel to it.
Kyle Houston's art is very influenced by Mignola. He'll tell you that. And that was actually why my son and I were attracted to him in the beginning, is because we love that heavy blacks, what he calls spot blacks. And, we love Hellboy. We love BPRD. Like I said, Baltimore is actually my favorite of his titles, although I love Lobster Johnson and Abe Sapien, all of it. But he's a tremendous influence on us. I love the way that he weaves such a richness in his stories, like the folklore and the religion, and a lot of that's in our books, too.
Great. All right, so drop everything, all the info where they can get the comic book, The Shepherd, and all the projects from Caliber Comics.
Sure.
Right now.
Okay. Go to calibercomics.com. That's the fastest way to do it. You can see all the different books that we publish. We have books that we published back in the 90s in our first run, and, of course, tons of new stuff that we're publishing now since 2014. Okay. That's the easiest place to go, but, of course, you can find The Shepherd on Amazon. We're on Kindle. Comixology carries Caliber stuff. Drive-through comics. So we're easy enough to find. Trust me.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Andrea, Lorenzo, Molinari, thank you so much. I'm going to get into some Shepherd issues with you in a minute.
Good.
And we're signing off here from the Infinity Toy and Comic-Con here in Kissimmee, Florida. Hopefully we'll be back with more. Thank you so much.